Dear students, you are all welcome to the EPG Pathashala on the course titled Public Policy Analysis. I am Dr. Venkatesh, Department of Political Science, University of Hyderabad. My areas of specialization are Public Policy Analysis, Public Governance and Election Studies. As part of Public Policy Analysis, today I would like to speak on public policy design, instruments and tools. Friends, if you look at the existing literature on public policy analysis for the last few decades, one will come across that there has been a tremendous growth in the area of the policy design, because the public policy design is an important component in the public policy debate and discourse. Subsequently, the instruments which are supposed to be used for the displaying of the public policies to the community are also emerging as the one of the important area for this study. Therefore, the prominent scholars including Guy Peter, Christopher Wood, Patricia LaGalla, etc. have contributed extensively in this area. See, if you look at the recent literature, especially Guy Peter's contribution for the writing on the public policy design, if you can refer one of his latest article, that is Public Policy Design, Shift from Technocrats to Complexity and Beyond, it gives a clear-cut idea. Therefore, today in this class, I would like to basically focus on what is meant by policy design. What are the definitions of the policy design given by the various scholars? What is the historical evolution of the policy design? What are the instruments which have been existing for the taking policy transformation through the instruments? And subsequently, I also would like to illustrate the nature of policy instruments, political relations and legitimacy that has been taking place on the basis of the classification given by Christopher Wood. Christopher Wood is another prominent scholar in the area of the policy design. So, when you look at the definition part of the policy design, Guy Peters raises three important questions. One is that what is policy design, and in which way the notion or the concept of policy design has been contributing for the remaking, improvement, changes and transformation of the public policy or the designing of the policies. So, with these basic questions, now we will go into the defining of the meaning of the policy design. When you look at the literature on the policy design, it is understood that the policy design is not a production of the artifacts. The policy design is basically some set of an attitude. It is designing from the academic point of view. It is some set of a mental exercise when before taking for the implementation of the policy, because there are so many components in the policy, public policy analysis, that is the policy formulation, policy implementation, policy evaluation, etc. But before all these stages, the policy design requires several important aspects to be taken into account. The major challenge for policy design relates to a more comprehensive conceptualization of both policy and design. From the commonsensical point of view, it is emphasized that policy cannot be limited to decision making or implementation. However, it represents for a multi-dimensional mechanism for intervening into society, economy for systematic change. According to Guy Peters, for design, there is a need to set concepts and understanding right from the onset. Design is certainly not not one thing, and intention is not to propose a standard definition. Modern design has always been a very diverse and diverging practice, which has tended to integrate methods from the other disciplines as it expanded its scope over the last 2 or more centuries. After the Second World War, design has integrated elements of systems theory and cybernetics, organizational development, and communication theories. With the complexity and further broadening of the scope of design applications, design thinking, research, and practices started to embrace the notion that design is not merely about producing material artifacts, but it can be conceived of as organizational design, dialogic design, or systematic design. Therefore, Churchman, Osbekan, Akoff, Nelson, and Stolterman argues that design is the practical wisdom and a way of human inquiry differentiated from science and arts. It is only through design that one activity seeks to introduce change, with design being the ability to imagine that which does not exist to make it appear in concrete form as a new purposeful addition to the real world. In this context, Guy Peters observed that the design has become central to a wide range of forward-looking social interventions known as public policy. Moreover, this approach also broadens the notion of design beyond methods or thinking and towards design attitudes and competencies that are not limited to formally trained designers. Most importantly, this emphasizes that design is not just about problem solving, deals with approximating idealized or particular real life situations in order to create structure, meaning, and functionality. Boland and Kolepi defines design is the giving of form to an idea for shaping artifacts and events that create more desirable features. Again, design is not about methods or thinking, but the design attitude, which is different from decision making or problem solving, because design represents the relentless search for openness and the need to expand the solution space. Simon defines design as the human endeavor of converting actual situations into preferred ones. Rittel and Weber were both designers and policy practitioners, says that it was the separation between policy and design that led to the situation in which designers and policy people appropriate wicked problems for design or policy respectively without often being aware of the shared roots of this concept. So with these basic definitions of the policy design, now I would like to focus something about the historical evolution of policy design. Harold D. Laswell is considered the father of the study of public policy, and to a great degree he straddled the gap between looking at policy from an explanatory perspective and focusing on purposive interventions. On the one hand, Laswell developed perhaps the earliest model of the decision-making process for policy making in 1951 and demonstrated how that model could be used to explain the policy choices being made. On the other hand, however, he was concerned with design issues such as creating policy processes and policies that would work within the constraints of real-world political systems. Politics, Economics and Welfare, the title of the book, which was published in 1953, a classic book by Robert Dahl and Charles Lindbaum, was an early attempt to understand the possibilities of government interventions into the economy and society. The book provides a detailed and insightful look into basic process of governing, most importantly making public policy. In this book, design was considered more in terms of as planning, but provides the student of design ways of understanding the process at a very fundamental level. The concept of policy design began to pick up during the 1980s by a group of scholars who were interested in confronting the demands for formulating public policies in a more conscious manner. The group focused on the elements of policy design. Linder and Peter suggested that 3 elements are necessary for design. Number 1, a model of causation. To design, the designer must understand why observed problem is there. Number 2, a model of instrumentation. Designer must understand the array of instruments available to implement the proposed solution to the problem. And 3, a model of evaluation. Must have in mind the values that he/she in pursuing in making the interventions. Aaron Wildewski was also concerned with how to make such effective interventions into the economy and society. Although Wildewski was in many ways skeptical about the capacity of governments to design policies and to make such selection interventions, his perspective on policy did point to the importance of design and planning issues in policy process. Now I would like to shift from the historical evolution of the policy design to the instruments as the focus for policy design. The design approaches mentioned above were much interested in instrument selection as one component of the overall design for a policy. A subsequent stand of thinking about policy design focused on instruments as the central element of design. Perhaps the best examples of this manner of thinking about design can be seen in the work of Michael Howlett. Although it builds on a very large volume of tools, literature in public administration and policy that has sought to identify and classify the means through which governments attempt to influence actors in the economy and society. It can be argued that policy formulation and instrument selection are perhaps the heart of any design process. Attempting to understand policy design without understanding the natural problems or the values involved appears to shooting in the dark. The wicked problems literature provides one means of understanding policy problems, but that does not address the variance in the nature of more ordinary problems. Further, accepting problems as given does not take into account adequately extent to which policy problems are political constructions rather than some objective conditions that can be addressed by the proper instrument. Patricia Lee Galls, in his chapter on policy instruments and governance, this has been published in the book titled Governance, says that public policy instrumentation is therefore a means of orienting relations between political society via the administrative, executive and civil society via its administered subjects through intermediaries in the form of devices that mix technical components like measuring, calculating, the rule of law and procedure and social components such as representation, symbols, etc. The instrumentation is expressed in a more or less standard form, a required passage for public policy and combines of obligations, financial relations such as tax reductions, economic aid and methods of learning about population, that is statistical observations. Public policy instruments are a form of power. Instruments are not neutral. They structure, design public policies and their outcomes. They have impacts on their own. They are independent from the policy goals and they structure the mode of governance. Instruments determine the way in which actors are going to behave and create uncertainties about the effects of the balance of power. They will eventually privilege certain actors and interests and exclude others. They constrain the actors while offering them possibilities and they drive forward a certain representation of problems. The social and political actors therefore have capacities for action that differ widely to the instruments chosen. The instruments partly determine what resources can be used by whom. The instruments allow forms of collective action to stabilize and make the actors' behavior more predictable and probably more visible. So with this understanding of the policy instruments, Christopher Wood, a prominent scholar on public policy design, he has classified the instruments, the political relations and the kind of legitimacy that each of the instruments is getting. For example, if we take the first instrument is legislative and regulatory. The nature of the political relation is that through this legislative and safeguarding instrument, the political system is promoting for the social guardian state, that is the character of the state. If you are promoting through the legislative and regulatory, that is through the imposition of general interest by mandated representatives. That is that these are applicable to each and every citizen in a geographical context of a particular country. It is because by nature the decision has been taken through the legislative and it is a regulatory measure. The second instrument is economic and physical. The purpose of the economic and physical instrument is to make the state as a distributive state, and that distributive state will get the legitimacy in the process of the socio-economic efficiency. The third instrument is agreement and incentive based instrument. That is basically the agreement and incentive based instrument is basically for the to make nature and character of the political system as a mobilizing state through sealed direct investment. Then the fourth instrument is information and communication based instrument. That is to promote some sort of a deliberative democracy or academic democracy. That means that everyone will be taking part in the deliberations and debates and discussions. That is that it gives in the form of a legitimacy to the state, in the form of a explaining decision to the larger audience, larger citizens, and also maintaining of the accountability to the citizens. And final instrument is that de facto and de jure standards and best practices. The purpose of this instrument is to promote some sort of a competitive mechanism in the system. That is the basically to say that the political system is promoting some sort of a competitive mechanism, that is through the scientific and technical and then pressure in order to face the market mechanism. So this is the classification, this is the various kinds of instrumentalities that has put forward before at the time of the designing of the public policy. And then now coming to the question of the tools. In the public policy design, the people who are involved in the designing of a policy, that is from the academic perspective, they will be having a set of tools. On the other hand, the people who are involved in the implementation, they will be having some sort of a different type of tools. Subsequently, the people who are evaluating a public policy will also be having a different type of tools. So when we look at it from the an academic perspective, the tools that are available for the policy designing are that the quantitative and qualitative tools. The quantitative tools that basically collect the quantitative information, that will also facilitate for the quantification of the data in the form of tables and then in the form of graphs and then computerization, etc. The quantitative data is collected through that structured questionnaire will be a comprehensive one, and that brings out a comprehensive information about any issue on which the system is supposed to make a policy design. Subsequently, the qualitative tools are also helpful for the policy design in order to fill the gaps in the existing quantitative technique, because the qualitative techniques of the tools are more important tools in order to get the direct information from the person, because that will facilitate for the to get the real experiences, the social conditions, the living conditions of the people. Then these experience will be converted into the inputs for the policy design. So for example, to get the life experiences of the people, there are several tools, qualitative tools. For example, the social mapping, the resource mapping, the key informant interview, the institutional ranking, then the livelihoods analysis of the people. And these are some of the tools which can be used towards the making of a policy design and using of them as a tools and also getting of the proper information, data and the inputs. Whether you are making a problematic taxation, regulation or a revenue aspect or a welfare aspect or distributive aspect or mobilizing aspect or a deliberative aspect, these are the tools which will contribute for the strengthening and enhancing the capacities of the policy designers. No, the policy designers will not be operating in a vacuum. Therefore, the policy designers also supposed to learn the things from the realistic world, because the policy design itself is an important component that has emerged in order to operate in the real world situation, especially in the political situation, in the political conditions of a particular geographical area or a particular sovereign country. So when you look at this overall, the picture of the policy design, it is clear that there has been a growing importance for the last few decades. Therefore, there is a need for the emphasis about the policy design instruments and tools in the study of the public policy analysis. Dear friends, I hope that I will be making some sense about this notion of the policy design instruments and tools. From this talk, you must have got some idea that when you look at from the summarization point of view, that policy design instruments and tools are the important component in the public policy analysis that will be as part of the policy formulation, implementation and evaluation. And over a period of time, the literature has contributing immensely to understand this concepts by the students of the public policy analysis, public administration, and the people who are involved in the policy designing, policy practitioners such as the politicians, the bureaucrats, the civil society organizations, and common people even to put their ideas into policy design. So therefore, the people at the global level, at the world level has been responding. The world renowned policy thinkers have been responding to make it a more a concept which is easy to understand, which is easy to put into the policy making framework. Therefore, Guy Peter, Christopher Wood, Patrice Lagala, then Wildwalski, these are some of the people who have extensively contributed. The intention and purpose of the policy design is that they don't want to make any confusion among the students about the concept of the policy design. Therefore, they have extensively deliberated about the idea of the design and then looking at it the policy design, putting into the academic debate and discussion about the broader concept of the policy design. They have clearly stated that policy design is not a production artifact or producing some material or designing some building, but it is some sort of a attitudinal design of the human beings and more specifically designing of the policy which has got a purpose or an objective of bringing about socio-economic transformation in the society and reaching the benefits of the public policy to the logical end or the people who are supposed to get them benefited. So subsequently, the policy design also required quite the effective instruments in taking forward to the logical end. Therefore, they have also deliberated about the policy instruments and subsequently, in order to get the inputs for the policy design, the policy designers also suggested certain tools to get the real world situation or the information from the real world situation, what is happening to the individual, what is happening to the community, what is happening to the policies, to what extent the instruments and instrumentalities have been contributing immensely immensely as well as enriching of the notion of the policy design. So therefore, over a period of time, the academic importance to the notion of the policy design has been increasing. Its significance has been becoming one of the most world recognized aspect in understanding. That is why when we look at the prominent public policy institutions across the globe, for example, Crawford School of Public Policy in Australia, the Lee Kuan School of Public Policy in Singapore, Harvard University, London School of Economics and Politics, and the Azerbaijan Institute of Public Policy in Kazakhstan, and several such well-known institutions have been focusing on the policy design exercise at length. And therefore, it is essential we must also look into this concept in a deeper manner so that to get the proper understanding, the scientific understanding, the realistic understanding of the notion of public policy, to make it as one of the most scientific, appropriate and relevant topic today. So in continuation to this policy design, and next topic we will be discussing about the public policy institutions, actors. That means that the institutions and actors in the making of the public policy. Thank you.